So, would you consider yourself? What would you consider your most famous drawing? Because a lot of people looking from the outside in, I'd say the biggest drawing is your deep state drawing of the swamp creature looking down at Trump and pointing as Trump is draining the swamp. A lot of people are very familiar with that picture. But in what's your opinion on your most famous drawing to date?
Well, it's hard to say because had several, but the first one was definitely the March of Tyranny, which
Hmm.
back in those days I just cranked them out really fast because why would I spend it? I wasn't selling prints, I wasn't doing anything. I was just like putting them on my blog.
Hmm.
And this thing was done in 2010. I just drew it like in 3 hours with a Sharpie pen because I had this idea of this, globalist pyramid
Hmm.
representing the central bankers, and they're controlling both parties with the legs with the Republican and Democrats, and they spent each time marching along and kicking the voters as they went along. Well, this cartoon went viral, and this is also what attracted all the trolls because all of a sudden, this was like being translated into Spanish, and I would get email from everywhere in the world how much they love this cartoon. And unfortunately, that was also the trigger for all the trolling because it's almost like you have to jump through this fiery hoop if you want to become known because the trolls, they can't stand it. They don't want anybody who's this nobody, this unknown nobody, to all of a sudden get some small modicum of attention on their internet. And so they try to destroy people like that. And boy, that's what happened. Like I said, that happened to me for so long that I was like, in a state of anger and fear all the time, and that was a very bad combination
Yeah.
of emotions. But
Hmm.
once I started getting established, people knew who I really was. Then it became easier to, and once we were able to outshop the trolls, I would say the swamp cartoons, and I've drawn several, but that one with the Trump's swamp draining service, that was a huge hit. But I've had several others, like I drew a Brexit cartoon that was extremely popular in Europe, and it's been reposted and republished in newsletters and books and magazines, and that one got a lot of attention. And then it so upset the Guardian that they actually assigned a columnist to write a hit piece on me.
Is this the abandoned ship one?
Yeah, abandoned
Okay.
ship, and just because I had the temerity to criticize the unlimited influx of refugees and immigrants, Muslims in particular, into
Hmm.
Europe, which and I'm kind of blunt about it. Islam is a threat to Western civilization because Sharia law is not compatible with Western law, especially our Constitution. So this is something that do we really want to? It's kind of like it bothers me that the West has lost confidence in their own institutions, and therefore they want to be. They almost like they want to be conquered. And this ties into the socialism because they want us to be conquered, especially in
Correct.
America. That's what it's all about: is to destroy America so they can, out of the ashes, bring up their socialist system. That's why the progressives and the left and the socialists all want to portray America as some vile, evil place that, we have to renounce all of our history. We have to tear down statues. We have to, allow everybody in the world to come here and get free stuff. It's all about destruction, and it's this postmodern subjective morality. There is no right and wrong. There's no objective morality. They can't stand that. So there's no really any foundation or edifice that can be that is allowed to be unattacked. That's why they're going after our freedom of speech. That's why they want to grab our guns, and on and on. And I
So,
could go on all day about this, but the source of this is really, it goes back decades ago. Well, I could just name one guy, for example. There's a very famous journalist professor named Curtis McDougall. Now, this guy wrote textbooks that I think they went into like 6 or 7 editions, and generations of journalists were used this textbook. It's called advocacy journalism. In other words, I think no, the book was called. I think it was called Interpretive Reporting. In other words, there's no fair and balanced objective reporting anymore. It's replaced with let's sway the audience. See, because you're doing the right thing. It's that we want you to go out there and twist and distort, and it's okay for you to weave in your personal opinions, which are basically socialist based. That's why we have the media we have today. That's their minds have all been poisoned by these people, these teachers at the university, to go ahead and push as hard as they could socialism, and that's why we're at the place we are today. That's why the mainstream media always on this, and it goes back to people like Walter Cronkite, who has a university named after him, a journalism school named after him somewhere, but he never graduated from journalism school. The reason he was allowed to become so successful is because he had kind of a grandfatherly voice, but mostly he was a globalist and he hated nationalism. He wanted to destroy America, and he was like in the 60s, and everybody trusted him. And it was a big con game. This is the era where the CIA got involved too with their Mockingbird
media.
Yes, and they said, well, we ended that in the 70s. That's no.
It's still around today. So,
Yes,
so would you consider yourself on the fringe of being conspiratorial, or no, or do you not want to label yourself with that?
Well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm the one who shows you actual conspiracy.
Sure.
It's no theory.
Right? Yes, not a theorist,
right.
but you maybe could dabble into that. You look into these things. You look into. I mean, you've obviously done your homework on a lot of this stuff. Speaking of, like Hillary's emails, and I mean, like, are you familiar with like the WikiLeaks emails and all that? I'm sure you are.
Well, yes.
How deep that goes, and how strange these people really are. And I mean, you're talking about. I see that you have the owl in one of your pictures. I was just looking at it. It was a hotel, and on the front of the hotel was an owl. It looked like it had like a pentagram on it or something like that. Is that you? That seems like that would be up your alley if you're talking about a cabal, a deep state, because a lot of people don't believe in a deep state. So that's why
I have this all the time. I have an old guy on the East Coast. He's about 10 years older than me, but he hates Trump. He's on the far left, and he would send me emails. We would talk about art and music, because this guy he knows a lot about art and music. So we would have a lot of exchanges about that. But I kind of dreaded, one of these days he's going to discover my cartoons, and sure enough, and he wrote me back, and he was like incredulous, and he goes, Ben, there's no such thing as a deep state. It's government. Can you prove that there's a deep state? I said, okay. So I started writing this email. I started talking about, okay, what are these unelected bodies that sort of pull the strings in the background? Like, we got like the CFR, we got all the long-term functionaries in the NSA and CIA. You got the Bohemian Grove. You got the
I could see Skull and Bones.
Yes, well, that's all. It's all part of it. You got these, and even President Kennedy was talking about these secret societies that got way too much power. The Federal Reserve has way too much power.
Correct.
We handed over the ability to print money. So
correct.
They print money for the benefit of themselves and their goals and their colleagues at the expense of the taxpayer. Because when they print that money, they spend it first and foremost, and then as it trickles down the system, we get a devalued dollar.
Sure.
But anyway, the deep state is an obvious fact to me, but I didn't send him the email because this guy, he's not going to change his mind no matter what. He's not going to change his mind. His mind has been too thoroughly poisoned when it comes to the political issues.
Right.
But I kind of like wanted to help change the minds of, changing minds of my generation is great, but I kind of it's like my older brother. He's a Bernie supporter. I can't talk to him about politics. I'd love to debate him, but he won't do it, probably because he knows he's going to lose. But
right.
The point is, I'm not drawing the cartoons to try to change his mind. I hope to change millennials' minds in particular.
So speaking of printing money and so forth, how long does it take you to push one of these cartoons out? I mean, or drawings. What terminology do you want me to use for that? Cartoons or drawings or
Well,
art?
my commercial art, I do a lot of Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and
Hmm.
computer graphics. And so when it comes to cartoons, I do something that's old-fashioned. I want to kind of harken back to the old days. And so what I do is I got a very large piece of high-quality Bristol paper, and I use an ink brush pen. So what I do is I pencil the cartoons. I draw large because, first of all, I want to have, I want to try to do something more than just a cheap gag. So I kind of, and not always, but I like to draw big, elaborate, and a lot of dimensions in the cartoon. So I'll draw it on
Yes.
a big piece of paper, and then, once the pencil sketch is in there, I'm pretty quick with the inking in. I can always do them usually in a day. Occasionally, I do something really complicated. It'll take me, 2 days. But
So you're putting these things out pretty quick, and
yeah,
they're so elaborate. Like it's almost like looking at a. There's just so many elements to. You have to look at every inch of the drawing because there's so much going on. It's almost it's like telling a story from just one picture. It's quite entertaining. Actually, it's very entertaining, and I know a lot of people. They appreciate what you do, and I'm guessing business is doing really well for you right now, right?
well, it started. In 2015 when we hit bottom, and I
Hmm.
spent the last of my savings, and
Hmm.
we were almost close to having to live out of our truck, and that's how bad it.
Right.
And
I
then
understand.
the
Yeah.
Trump election saved us because my first book was the presidential election collection, and it sold very well. And then the sequel, Lock Them Up, was in 2017, and that continues to sell fairly well.
So
And
that's
so
how we can
it's
support
like a
you.
snowball. I mean, but we're not rich by any means, but boy, we're not bone on bone anymore. So that really helps, and I can't thank the supporters enough because I don't draw any kind of salary like these. The remaining cartoonists out there, they're almost all on the left. And they draw down an average of 100,000 a year, and of course the copious benefits. And these are the guys that win the Pulitzer prizes, and they get all the they're the stars, they're the glamour boys. And I sort of came out of the depths of the trenches
Hmm.
and just kind of did this. We did it all of our own, but we couldn't have done it without help. So the people
Correct. Yeah.
were generous to help us. They liked the message that they saw, and they want to help. And
Well,
it's sort of humbling to me because I do not like to rattle the tin cup, but we couldn't. I couldn't. I'd have to
you
go
got
get.
to survive, man. I mean, and what you
Yeah, so,
do, it's not just drawings, it's not just cartoons. I mean, you're influential to waking people up. And I found the picture that you drew, the drawing. It says the presidential leverage, and it has Trump pushing Brexit, and it's turning over the big club, and that's where I saw the owl with the pentagram on its chest, and then I look up to the top right hand corner and I see Podesta with a slice of pizza. So you're very much awake, my friend, which is what
well,
my audience knows, like they know most about. And I didn't know that. I thought you were, I didn't know how deep you went until pretty much this conversation, to be honest. So,
well, but
I will find myself,
yeah.
purchasing some of your. I might even purchase this one if it's still out there. So, I think this is great.
Yeah, any cartoon that's out there, we get prints made. We have a printer in town
Mm-hmm.
that and they like our cartoons because Montana tends to be more conservative. So I don't have to deal with somebody who hates printing them out who hates them.
Sure.
But the owl, for example, I mean, people would say, well, that's conspiracy theory. Well, really? I mean, then why do they have a giant owl at the Bohemian Grove and
Right. Yeah. Moloch.
that they
Correct.
have ceremonies with? I mean, come on. So these people are occultists. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and just when I started doing the cartoons, what woke me up was the banker bailout. When those bums got bailed out after they committed all their crimes, and the first thing that the taxpayer money did was go to paying their bonuses. So they get bonuses for being criminals.
Mm-hmm.
I was so outraged when all the politicians, and I wrote both my senators and representative and was pretty much ignored. And then Patty Murray, who was a senator in Washington State where we were living at the time, said, well, sometimes the citizens just have to eat their vegetables. So she's at this condescending thing. You're stupid. You eat your you do as you say. You eat your vegetables.
Right. Yes.
And so I said, well, I got to do something. And so that's when I started. But when I started looking into these things, and this is about this time I started listening to Alex Jones, because my younger brother lives in Austin. He said, you listen to this Alex Jones. So I listened to this guy.
I saw that you were on the Alex Jones show too. I watched that.
Yeah, and I tell you, he's the real deal too. He's like in private, he's just like he is on the air. I mean, this guy's a bundle of energy, and he knows. But they're trying to. Why do you think they're trying to deperson him? Because he was telling the truth. He'll get some things wrong for sure. And he told me himself. I've been mad at Alex Jones. I'll tell you right up front, when he started messing around with Charlie Sheen, boy, I blew a gasket, because Alex Jones is my hero, and we know who Charlie Sheen was. Sure. But what the hell is he doing out there? What is this? And I was like furious. But when I saw him in person, he told me to my face, he says, look, I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes, but a lot of the things that I'm saying on the air is dead. And when I did my own research, I found out, yeah, he's right. I mean, he's right about so many things that it's like, this is why they're trying to shut him up, because he's on the scent, he's on the trail, he's on the case. That's why he has to be depersoned. Now, once they got him out of the way with too much fanfare, well, now they're going to work on now they want to ban President Trump's tweets. I mean, that came out today. I mean, they want to shut him down.
Yes.
Blatant. Now they can't beat us in a debate. And the facts are coming out, and the facts are too deleterious to their image. So what do when they can't do anything else? They can't shut us up. Well, they start blatant censoring, and it's getting worse.
And I've heard there's a terminology out there now called virtual treason. Have you heard of this?
No, that's
that's an actual term that is a real thing, and
I got to write that down. That's good.
Virtual treason. It's a real thing. I came across another picture which I noticed. In a lot of my thumbnails that I do for YouTube, I incorporate Pepe. I just think it's fun. I like memes. And I believe this is what you were trying to do. It's the Uma Abedin, the racist boogeymen are here. And then I see InfoWars, Alex Jones coming out from under the bed. And then coming out of the drawer, I see I'm 100% sure that's Pepe. Is with the way you draw, do you yourself follow memes? Don't you, being an artist, don't you find that is such a huge that incorporates artistry, and it incorporates information so well?
Exactly.
Yes. And what are your thoughts on memes, being an artist?
Well, when I started out, I didn't know anything about memes. I didn't know anything about internet culture.
Sure.
I'm an old man. I came into all this game late, because I didn't keep up with any of this stuff.
Well, you're killing it, my friend. I'll be honest.
But you know what? Once I started, I was so mad at 4chan. I mean, I wanted to sue Christopher Poole when he owned 4chan.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that what kind of forced me to learn is I got immersed into this meme culture, because I didn't know what they were. These visual memes. I didn't get it. Well, now I get it, and that's one good thing. Is like this whole trolling episode forced me to understand what's the bigger picture, rather than me just getting attacked. I had kind of a narrow focus on that. But once I had a broader focus, I'll give you an example. I was mad at 8chan too, because they were doing the same thing, and I wrote a nasty letter to the guy who ran 8chan at the time. Was this young man named Frederick Brennan, and he has brittle bone disease.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And I was like really upset with him, and he started something. We had like a little argument, and he's telling me, well, what kind of libertarian are you? You're against free speech. I said, this isn't free speech. This is libel. There's no such thing as, and then I forgot the phrase that he used, but it was like unlimited, complete, free speech. There's no such thing as libel. You can do anything on 8chan. And I said, well, they're stealing my property, and you're publishing. They're allowing them to publish this stuff. Whatever, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I decided, and after that went nowhere, I decided I was going to draw a cartoon of him to make him mad, right? Mm-hmm. So I drew this guy, and I said, well, his body's useless. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw this with his quirky little expression. I'm going to show just his head in his wheelchair, and the wheelchair is burning because he's in hell. He's got this wheelchair, because they call him Hot Wheels because he goes around in a wheelchair. So I had this burning wheelchair in his head, and I sent it to him, and guess what? This guy loved that, and he wanted to put it on a coffee mug. And I was like, this is kind of like my awakening right there. And I said, wait, can this guy who's got all this young man who's facing this tremendous physical, limitations.
Yeah.
And I was trying my best to make him mad, but he boomeranged it back with humor. He loved it. And that's when I started, wait a minute, I'm doing all this wrong, Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, it kind of like broke a spell with me. And I've never had a surfeit of what you call grace, right? Sure. I was always like bitter and mad, and I was like, I don't want anybody to criticize me. I'm very sensitive. Mm-hmm. I get very truculent. Mm-hmm. But after that, I sort of was kind of blessed with a small modicum of grace that I never had before. And then all of a sudden, I can kind of laugh at myself. And it was weird. The spell kind of went away. And then all of a sudden, all this Nazi stuff, it still bugged me a little, but it didn't bother me nearly as much. And in fact, when I see what they do now, I just laugh. I said, well, that's actually pretty well done. Somebody spent all this time to try to make me mad, and I'm laughing because I think it's funny. Once I stopped caring about it,
I'm looking at the wheelchair picture.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
And what we ended up doing is we kind of collaborated, and he actually sold quite a few of those mugs, hot mugs, Mm-hmm. But I credit that young man for kind of like.
Do you talk to him at all, ever?
No, I never talked to him. Not in person. It was just email.
No, sure, that's what I meant. But did you converse?
Just email. I don't know. But he doesn't even run a show down there anymore. I don't even know what he does, but he was in the Philippines at the time.
Did you bridge the gap? Did y'all bridge the gap?
Yeah, well, yeah. And, after that, I kind of like, you guys could do whatever you want. I don't care. This is like, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? And so now when they do it, I kind of, I'm getting noticed. That means people who don't know who I am are going to get mad. They're going to go to bengarrison.com. They're going to see my disclaimer. No, I don't draw any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that my real cartoons don't make people mad. And I want, and at a certain level, I want to make them mad, because I want my cartoons to be remembered. And I often say that if you tell somebody something important while punching them in their gut, they're going to remember that, right? So the cartoons are kind of like work on different levels. There's an intellectual level, but there's also this emotional level, and it's a punch in the gut. And so I don't want to draw something that's just something that's a cheap laugh that's easily forgotten.
You're too smart for that. Like, that's what I was saying before. That your whole drawings, it's like looking at you have to look at every inch of the drawing because there's a story being told there, and you put words in and stuff like that. So it's very intricate, and you got a special talent, man. I'll be honest.
You mentioned the words, and this is what I get the most flack for, is why do you put so many labels on your cartoons? Well, it's because it's an old American tradition, and I wanted my heroes to go way, 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 way back to the golden age of newspapers when there were like 2,000 or 3,000 paid cartoonists, because that was the internet of the day. But you had so many great editorial cartoonists from that era and their cartoons were peppered with labels. And you know what? 100 years later, you can understand what's going on because they're labeled. You don't have to question, well, who's this and what's going on, because they do. So that's what I do again. But that really annoys a lot of people. But that's good too. But see, that's what I'm trying to do here, because a cartoon is not an illustration. A lot of people think that the best cartoons have no labels at all. And a lot of people in Europe subscribe to this belief because a lot of European cartoonists, they don't want to put any labels whatsoever on their things. But I always think, well, that's an illustration then. That's not a real editorial cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
A real editorial cartoon combines words and images. They combine the symbolic with the semantic. And what that does is get both hemispheres of the brain engaged, and that helps you remember things. So what I do is try to I take a lot of tired old cliches and metaphors that all editorial cartoonists do, but I try to combine them and put a twist to them and make it new again in different permutations. And so, but the dimension is my fundamental intent is to use satire, which includes humor, but it's not necessarily all predicated on humor alone. There's a lot of things involved with satire rather than just I consider humor to be a byproduct of the satire. Sure. And in fact, not funny. People see me, they might think in person I should be this funny guy, and I'm actually not very funny at all. I'm very serious because these are serious issues I'm dealing with, and I don't look at a story and the first thing I think of, what's funny in this? The first time I think of is, wow, this really makes me mad.
Right. Well, you could see that you're trolling the opposition hugely with the absurd caricatures of these people, of John Brennan, George Soros. These people, you're drawing them. It's outlandish. It's hilarious. Bernie Sanders, stuff like that. Barack Obama. I'm looking at a bunch of them right now. Growing up, what was your, this is a simple question, but what was your favorite cartoon? I'm sure, you grew up with the papers, and I don't know if you looked at, Sunday morning cartoons, that kind of stuff like that.
Oh, I had a lot of them.
Like influences.
I always read the comics, when the comics were actually good. I mean,
sure.
They've been ruined by political correctness now. But, when I was a kid, I loved Mad Magazine. I like all those famous cartoonists from the past.
Sure.
And I learned how to, there's now I can't summon up his name. That's the problem with getting old.
It's okay. I have another question for you.
There's a guy who drew really goofy stuff, and he drew like these. He drew like the really long feet, and the feet would like be bending over or bending up, and then there. It was, and I wish I could remember his name. I don't know why it escaped me, but he would draw hands, and I would try to copy the way he drew hands, and that's why I'm pretty good at drawing hands right out of my head. And I just I just use the same kind of hands that go back to that guy that I can't remember.
Right. Well, so
or it was Sergio Leone. I can remember all these other guys now, and I can't remember. But anyway, that was kind of like my influence. But when I started drawing cartoons, it was sort of like in the 5th, 6th grade, and and then by junior high, I discovered I could draw my classmates. I would draw caricatures of my classmates, and they would like crack up. So I was kind of like this tall, skinny kid, and not very popular, but that sort of got me some popularity. And then in high school, I did the same thing. I would draw my teachers. And I remember one time I drew my math teacher, and some smart kid grabbed it and gave it to the math teacher. And I said, "Oh, I'm dead," because this guy was this kind of a big, fearsome man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Lord. It was a male teacher.
Oh, that's it. I'm dead, Yeah. Instead, he turned around and he put it up on his bulletin board. He loved it. So, that's the kind of stuff that I did when I started out. But when I got to college, I kind of gave up the cartooning because I wanted to become a painter, and I wanted to be a fine artist, and that's what I intended on doing, only to discover that it's nearly impossible to make a living as a fine artist. So then I became a newspaper artist, and I did that for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. And then in 97, I started my own business where I did business and corporate graphics, like information graphics and things like that. And that's what I did for, until I started messing with these cartoons. I kind of rediscovered cartooning again. And then, and that proved my demise in a way because that killed my commercial art career. But now, hey, I'm kind of like doing what I wanted to do when I was a kid. Here I am.
Right. And I see a picture on here. You say political correctness, and you see Trump stabbing the dragon of political correctness. And that kind of goes along with your story about with 4chan and 8chan, where they were like, there's no rules, it's no holds barred out here on the internet. And you said you understood that now, that I could tell that you are a guy that is completely against political correctness, correct?
Well, I knew nothing about Trump. I never watched any of his shows. I didn't. I knew kind of
Sure.
knew who he was. I thought, yeah, this kind of braggadocio, loudmouth billionaire. Yeah, sure. He's not. He doesn't have a chance. But when I saw him in the debate,
Hmm.
he was the only guy who was fearless and not afraid to be politically incorrect. So that was the first cartoon I drew. And I have to say Tina liked him before I did.
Hmm.
But when I saw him in the debates, this guy has to be president. He may not have. This is the guy, because before then I was going for Rand Paul. Now Rand Paul just couldn't get any traction.
No.
What I feared the most was going to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary, and Jeb Bush was just, oh man, not another Bush. This thing is so
No,
rigged.
all deep state,
Guy,
yes.
he loves Mexico and he wants to open borders, and he's
Yeah.
like
Yep.
following the dad's footsteps, and he's just be part of the corrupt cabal. It's
Yeah.
going to, Hillary or Jeb, and whoever wins, you lose. But when I saw Trump, I said, I've got to help this man get elected. And so I'm going to draw these pro-Trump cartoons, even though I disagree with him on several issues. But
And
for the
that says so in your Wikipedia also. So
what,
you're being completely honest about. No, it just says that you weren't a fan of Trump from the get-go.
no, I never watched any of those
Hmm.
shows like that. I kind of vaguely knew who he was, and that was it.
Yeah.
But in the debates, I mean, he just like stood out.
It was
I mean,
refreshing, right?
this guy was a real leader. And you
Exactly.
can tell, I mean, looking in Korea, I mean, I just did this cartoon of him in Korea. This guy has guts. He just walks across that border. He doesn't need like protection. He
No.
goes into North Korea and he's like the man. Contrast that with Obama, who's like
Ugh.
2 miles away with binoculars behind.
Correct. I've seen those. Yes. There's some memes out there about that. That's I've seen those pictures. Ben, I got a couple more questions for you. Maybe one or two questions, then we'll wrap it up. We've gone a little over, but this is so fascinating to me because I have one real quick question that's kind of just for my own just knowledge of things. I grew up, I loved The Simpsons. I loved King of the Hill, so on and so forth. A lot of cartoons. I'm in my mid-30s, and I remember cartoons when they were actually drawn, and they had to flip back and forth the papers, and they actually made cartoons that way. But now it becomes more digitized, where I think, like you said, like with Adobe Art and so forth. Do you think do you think it takes away from the cartoon?
Yeah, I don't watch any of that stuff. I mean, my son does, and Tina does too. I don't watch any of these not modern movies with this computer generated algorithms.
Yeah.
I know it's beautiful with all the blade of grass and all this, but to me, it's boils the human experience down to a set of rules, and you see the same. The story there isn't any good. I mean, the stories are all the same. They're safe, political correct stuff. I mean, they always
Sure.
got the same wry expression for the little kid, the smart little kid with the little raised eyebrow. I mean, they just go through the emotions,
Right.
and it's like it's reached a cul-de-sac now. It's gone
Yes.
a long way down since Disney put out the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Hmm.
And Disney would be rolling in his grave. He'd be like, if he knew what happened to his company, I'm sure he'd be like on a rotisserie going round and round, because it's like Disney is now a disgrace. I don't like anything that Disney puts out, and I won't watch those things.
Sure.
This
I was specifically talking about the style because with The Simpsons was coming out, you could see that it was drawn, and then I could see
that
I could
still
see the
had
transition from drawing to
yeah,
digitizing it.
had some, and same thing with King of the Hill and
Yeah.
Family guy too.
Hmm.
I thought you were talking about these, these technological wonders that you require banks of supercomputers to do all this stuff. And I
No,
just,
no. I was just talking about the transition where I believe that when it went from actually drawing it to maybe Adobe Art, I believe that it lost some of its, charm, per se.
yeah,
In
it
my
does.
opinion.
It somehow gets plasticized, and I noticed that
Yes,
too.
good word.
I
Plasticides.
use Adobe Illustrator a lot, and I've
Hmm.
done a lot of rendering using that. But
Hmm.
there's a certain kind of a coldness that results. But
Yes.
the biggest problem. I mean, yeah, this is fine. I mean, it took a lot of cleverness and ability to create these fancy cartoons nowadays. But to me, it's just kitsch because a lot of it just it always relies on the same violence, and we have the bane of the comic book movies now, and it's like it's very limited what they could do with these comic book this
It's
repetitive
it's it's been beaten to death. It's been
yeah,
beaten to
it's just
death.
kitsch showing these things that in real life, these physics defying things and events that would usually result in broken legs and severed heads or whatever. But these people
Hmm.
always survive, whether it's cartoon or CGI used with realism. I mean, I just can't stand that kind of stuff.
No, I
It's just
understand. I don't like it either. And I know there's generational, views on a lot of, with CGI and, you like it in the old days and everything like that. But I'm a traditionalist myself, and I prefer without the CGI. I'd rather go back and watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where people are actually are in the costume, or old Star Wars. These sorts of things, not this beating a dead horse of a Marvel,
Yeah, well,
movies. It's just
it's not the fault of the CGI. In and of itself, it's pretty laudable accomplishment. But the problem
mhm,
is the story. They attach it to these empty stories that just teach you nothing but gratuitous violence.
sure.
And the same kind of this political correctness that has infected everybody's mind. And a good thing I like talking to you is you haven't succumbed to the up-talking virus, which has really been annoying me. I see video after video of young people, and they'll have a declarative sentence, but it ends with a question.
Mhm.
You know, they can just say something. Well, then I walk down the street. My name is Ben. I mean, what is this? You hear everywhere
Right.
now. They don't. It's like it's kind of like this wimpification of the English language.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
totally I totally
So
agree with
you know
you.
what? Put that on your radar, and if you hear this up talking, and
Mhm.
everybody's doing it now, and it's got a cease. It really bothers me, and that's an aside, but it bugs me.
Last question for you, Ben. What is the future of America? Are we going to see a Trump dynasty? Are we going to see his children come in? Are we going to see a Donald Trump Jr. presidency after this? What's the give me a 10-year ballpark estimate of this country? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, my crystal ball broke a long time ago. But I don't see how they're going to defeat Trump with the current spate of candidates that they have. There's just no way. It's going to be a choice between, we want to make America great again, or do we want to make everybody poor? Because that's what socialism does. They want equality.
Right.
Everybody must be made equal, which is impossible because human beings are not equal. So what the equality they settle upon is everybody becomes equally poor. So we have a choice between this destructive path or trying to make America great again. And I disagree with the president about keep America great because he has not accomplished enough to achieve that greatness yet. I mean, there's still too much work to be done. The swamp really hasn't been drained yet. I haven't seen anybody locked up.
Mhm.
So in 10 years, after his second term, I want to see that wall built. I want to see infrastructure built. I want him, and his biggest accomplishments thus far, in my opinion, is he's kept us out of war because we got a lot of.
We'll stay out of it too. And
Uh,
my beliefs, we will stay out of war under this
we're not
administration.
going to become great if we start engaging in these major wars that could trigger into a complete devastating millions dead type scenario. So
Yeah.
he keep us out of war. And if he could do something about the border, we can't handle, millions and millions of people pouring in getting free stuff. we're either, they're trying to do this thing now where they don't even want citizenship, but as the citizenship is now racist. Well, if there's no such thing as a citizen, there's no such thing as a country.
Correct.
Want to preserve the country, we're going to have to get a control of that southern border in particular, and he's going to have to start making. There are going to have to be more accomplishments than what he's made so far. But I'm confident that he can do it. I can't imagine anybody else doing it. He might be our last best chance, because if we would have elected Hillary, we would have been going down that path.
Yeah, we're done. We would have been done a year ago. It
would have been over. We'd be in a war right now.
Yeah. This
person is the epitome of evil. She truly is a witch, and we dodged a bullet. And I think after we go through a few more of these Democrat debates, there's a good chance Hillary might step back in, because she'll be seen as the savior of the party and the one who has. She has the head on her shoulders. She stands out because she is not the socialist. She is there to, preserve the Democrat Party from people.
Yes,
that's how it's going to be presented.
Right.
And she's going to try to rig everything. Oh, the deep state is going to really try to go after Trump this time. By how? Well, there I am up talking, but it's how is he going to do it? Well, it's going to be. I guess that is a question, isn't it? They're going to do it. They're going to do it by. I know I'm getting oversensitive to that. They're going to do it by trying to shut down conservative voices. And I'm surprised I haven't been shut down more. I know I'm shadow banned on Twitter, but they're going to
join the club.
Flat out censorship, and that's going to really touch off. They're getting close to touching off a civil war. We already have the great divide now between left and right.
Yes.
And it's eventually, and I'm thinking they may want to. They want to touch off a civil war. Is anything that's going to be deleterious to America, they're for.
Right.
So after Trump, I don't see anybody else on the horizon that could do it. We need somebody like a younger Ron Paul, in my opinion, to come the pike. That's who I would support if we'd ever get somebody like that. I don't know if his son is up to the task, but that's what I want. I want somebody who's going to kind of restore the things that have made America great, which is protecting the Constitution instead of just paying lip service to it. God, I can rant, can I? Just go blathering on and on.
No, you're good, man. You're good. I wanna end it right there. And and Ben, we can talk about maybe a part 2 to this, because this was probably the best interview I've ever done. It was just, you're extremely interesting. I think it flowed so well. And where can people help support you? Where can people follow you? This channel covers almost 150,000 subscribers. So I can definitely pull for you and push that out. And could you just let everyone know your information and how to support you?
Well, if they just go to grrgraphics.com, that's GRRR graphics.com. Everything all the links and the Twitter and the Facebook, everything is there. And you know what? If they can even donate $1, I'm appreciative, because that adds up.
Absolutely.
That enables. If I get the donations, that means I don't have to go hit the bricks and looking for commercial artwork, which ends up taking a lot of my time. And so I can concentrate exclusively on the cartoon, and I can I can end up drawing one nearly every day. But I like to also spend more time and draw more elaborate things. And
we need you on the battlefield. That's a fact. I think you're very you catch the eye of a lot of people, and to me, I mean that's a soldier in itself. To help prolong nationalism and just this country, people need to understand what's going on, and I think you do a great servitude to that.
Well, thanks. And I listen to young people too. I want to try to change their minds, because I'm an old man, but the good thing about getting old is you sort of get like a perspective.
Sure.
And a perspective, and you end up knowing who you are too. And I kind of finally figured that out in my life. But my son is about your age, and I'm trying to get him into the business too, and I'm trying to get him engaged in the battle too. So I see that coming up on the horizon. He wants to start his own podcast. And he's one of the few who's conservative. Hallelujah.
Absolutely, man. That's That's great to have, your, bloodline, your own being on the right path, because there's a lot of traps along the way of being young and coming up, into growing up into, being, almost this age in mid-20s, mid-30s. There's a lot of traps to
There's a lot of peer pressure.
a
There's a
lot of
lot.
peer pressure, and there's a lot of threats out there too.
Well, yeah. Now there's like they're talking, not just throwing milkshake, but throwing acid. I mean, that's got to.
Yes, I mean
And yeah,
that's
and the system is encouraging that. People like Soros. I mean,
yeah.
this is getting dangerous.
It is
So
getting
we really have
dangerous,
to
and
speak
I would advise everyone just to kind of keep their eyes open, see something, say something, because it is dangerous out there for conservatives. But Ben, I want to thank you seriously for doing this. I know it was a little kind of a last minute ordeal, and you pulled through, and it was a pleasure. It really was. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
I did too. And let's do it again sometime.
We definitely will, my friend. I have a wonderful night. You can reach her at Twitter also, right? You're on Twitter. Can you tell them your handle real quick?
I think it's GERD Graphics. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really do. Tina handles most of that. I don't do a lot of tweeting, but yeah, that's what I should have had that printed out in front of me. But it's on our site, so they can
And
find.
I'll link all of your stuff in the video in the description box below. So if anybody wants to donate to Ben Garrison and support this, he's a tremendous artist and a great person. And Ben, I thank you for taking the time with me today. I really mean that.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. I always like a good rant.
There you go, my friend. Have a great day. I know you're Mountain Time, so you still got a little bit of your day left. And I hope we can do this again in the near future.
You bet.
All right, my friend. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that. I know the stream cut off earlier, but all of this time it was being recorded. I'll put it out there to you. If you found this informative and you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter at TRUreporting. Also, you can just support the channel if you can. By all means, it would really help out. And be kind and loving to one another. And I will speak with you all very soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.